Hello and welcome to Playing Favorites. I'm Paul.
I am Justin.
Hello, Justin. We're back again to
Yes,
do our
back.
podcast,
We're
our
back.
videos. I'm very excited because today on our episode, we're going to be talking about our favorite alternate timelines or alternate histories. So we'll get into more about what we're going to talk about today. But let's tell you, if you haven't already figured out, obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, check out our YouTube channel.
A lot of cool stuff there.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff, lots of fun things. And that short that you just published recently, Justin, had me laughing, thinking about giant reproduction in terms of God of War. And if you're interested in figuring out how giants make more giants, check that out. But aside from that, if you want to listen to our back catalog, which has a ton of amazing stuff, I would recommend going through whatever podcast listening service you look through and just search for Playing Favorites Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that people can get in touch with us, Justin, or send us possible ideas for episodes?
Obviously, you go to our Twitter account. I know Twitter is in a weird space right now. I've recently been working on making a thread account, so what you know about that when it's figured out. So we're working on all that stuff. We have a Facebook page, all that stuff. But yeah, obviously the best way probably is just comment on our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, so you know when we're posting things. But like you said, we also have our own podcast services around the globe, because we have some international listeners as well. But yeah, good stuff. But yeah, let's get to why we're here. What do we usually do? We usually just talk about things, right?
This is the podcast, Justin, where we take a topic, do a little bit of research, and then try to come up with what we consider to be our favorites and why. So the format of this usually goes: we each have a couple what we call honorable mentions. Those are ones that are up there, but not exactly our favorite. We always have the final favorite at the very end. And we will periodically throw out some shout outs to things that we just want to mention. And now we play, as Justin and I call it, the game of favorites, where we see if we guess each other's or
especially when we have this
kind
of topic that it doesn't have a lot of options to pick from. But
the pool to pick from is not huge.
But I feel like
good.
My picks, I think there's only one I think that we might overlap, to be quite honest. One of my shout outs might touch yours, but I think maybe one.
I think two.
Maybe two.
I think there's two that we're gonna maybe cross the streams.
But before we get into our favorites, let's do a little surprise topic here. We usually do a little warm up session. This is actually not really this is kind of just more of a question to you. If you could create an alternate timeline universe, what would you change and how would it be created?
First thing that came to mind: Donald Trump does not become president.
Oh my
Are you
God.
serious? Yes, like I don't even go back to him being born or anything. Just literally change the outcome of the 2016 election.
So how would that how would our world be right now? Would it be drastically different?
Yeah, I'd say it'd be. I don't know about the world. I can say my personal world in American civilization and culture would be very different.
Would Hillary still be president now?
2016, 2020, 2024.
Well, yeah, it would be the next.
I don't think they would have mounted it, but yeah, as soon as I thought of this, I'm like, I don't want to talk about this.
Okay.
But at the same time,
pick it, everyone.
Yes, I wish I could just erase that part of our collective history from all of our memories. But if I'm being a little bit more lighthearted, you know what I would like? I would like an alternate history or an alternate timeline. I want people to explore more of like what happens when in Star Wars if Darth Vader reached his full potential. Okay. Instead of losing to Obi-Wan.
So the end of the alternate ending of the episode 3 video game.
It's one of my shout outs. So I might as well just say it.
Is it a shout out?
Anakin wins and becomes Emperor. It's funny, like you usually like
I didn't think about that one.
In a video game like that, you wouldn't imagine it to be like a really like good or fleshed out one. And it's like okay, But yeah, it's like, how would Anakin get out of this situation? He beats Obi-Wan. He is faster than him, and it manages to flip over him and kills Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan falls into the lava. And then Palpatine comes with a array of stormtroopers and is like, "Congratulations! I knew you could do it, my boy," and presents him with his own red lightsaber. To which Anakin like flips around, like, "Hey, pretty cool," and then stabs the Emperor with immediately. First of all, I think Sidious would have stopped it, but anyways, he falls dead, and all the stormtroopers are like looking at each other, and he's like, "You will call me Emperor now," and end of game. I was like, now that is interesting.
Well,
I would have liked to see two.
I
There's
didn't
two
have.
there. I want
Yeah,
to see Anakin
yeah.
not go to the dark side. I want to see Anakin in the dark side, but no Sidious, like him defeating Obi-Wan and becoming Darth Vader.
So to add
with
to
full
add to
potential.
your Star Wars comment, because I mean I was trying to think of an alternate timeline thing. I was thinking actually more real world when I asked this question. I didn't even have a good answer, to be quite honest. I was like, oh, what was Paul going to say? Of course you bring up Trump.
I got too real. I'm sorry.
But no, the one I was thinking to add to your thing. Well, let's have Ahsoka not leave the Jedi Order. Like, what would happen? Like, would Anakin turn to the dark side? I think she's the one that kept him grounded and would have pulled him out of it. Like, Obi-Wan was too much of a almost of a challenge for
Yeah,
Anakin, right? He didn't want to.
father figure fighting out of the
Yeah,
shadow. Yeah.
yep. But Ahsoka really just like he needed like her like. I think when you see the end of the Clone Wars series and him realizing that she's gone or almost like dead or whatever, like when he finds like the aftermath of like the clones that were wearing the Ahsoka masks, what have you, like he just looks so lonely. It's like he like, oh man, I really wanted her to save him, but yeah, like because she's the only one I think that really understood him more than because Padme obviously liked him for one reason and Obi-Wan liked him as a Jedi, but Ahsoka was like kind of in the middle, and I don't know, that would have been really interesting to see if like if not even like I guess stay with the Jedi Order, but at least was there to stop him somehow. That'd be interesting to know. But
That's really, I mean, that is really interesting because the character of Ahsoka takes, from when they decided we're like, oh, we're gonna give him a Padawan, and the whole like premise of the Clone Wars in the beginning, people were, had very mixed feelings about it. Like, really? But over time, like, yeah, you get to see how he's pouring like his knowledge into her. And if anybody was to betray him, if it was her, that would mean like, so much to him. And her having like just left. Yeah.
he lost faith in Jedi completely.
Yep.
I mean, that whole scenario was like really, I think, set him on that path of just not trusting them at all.
Yep. And Palpatine just feeds that. Feeds it and feeds
absolutely.
it. And
but my initial thought about this though was I love the prequels, I love the sequel trilogy, but I want a world where instead of George Lucas making the prequels, he made the sequels. And I'd be curious. I think that would have been an interesting like era of Star Wars if he decided not to do the prequels instead and made like use a younger Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, all that stuff. Like, you add to like, well, I would like to see what Rise of Skywalker would be without Carrie Fisher passing away, like all those things. Like that'd be interesting.
Or we would have gotten 3 radically different movies. I would have loved to see them, and we could make fun of their foibles and inadequacies as well.
Sure.
But they would have at least been like his vision. And instead of getting kind of like 3 different movies that frankly aren't really connected very much, except for, what's on paper.
Sure.
But okay. Very good. I like this. I like the bending of the brains in this way, thinking of alternative.
I like how we just went to Star Wars though. We just like, we could have just stopped like, I don't know, COVID from happening or
no, all these things need to happen.
We need to make Star Wars better.
No.
Anyways.
I didn't think you were expecting me to come up with a real world scenario. Like
okay, you don't have to. I don't know what I was expecting. I was like, I didn't think it. I guess I was surprised you brought Star Wars up. But anyways, we have more things to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Real alternate history, like real ones.
I didn't do that. I didn't understand the assignment. If that's what we were supposed to do.
No. So, what is your first honorable mention, Paul, for
All right,
our alternate timeline? What is your
here you
favorite?
go. Since we just did our well, we've been talking about the 90s lately, and I think we put that to rest for a little bit. But I'm going to bring y'all back to the mid 90s for a comic book event that was pretty huge at the
Okay.
time. And it's Marvel, it's from Marvel Comics.
Okay.
It had a completely different art style, a lot of characters reimagined completely, and that is the Age of Apocalypse
Okay.
storyline.
Cool.
So,
Please tell me
um,
more. I'm not as familiar with this.
it was a huge deal, and it changed a lot of especially the X-Men, obviously, but it had ramifications for all the Marvel universe. So what I have down here, it's obviously it's called Age of Apocalypse, so it's like a dark dystopian future. It's not like a
Hmm.
joyous one under Apocalypse's rule. But
Most
what
alternate
happens
history, I think, is dark and dystopian. To be quite honest, it's
very rarely does it come out the way you want it to be, right? So it's like the monkey's paw of wishes. So Professor X, Professor Xavier, his son, whose name is Legion, he gets like I think he develops like the power to time travel. And seeing the conflict between his father and Magneto over time, he decides that the best way to solve this conflict is to go back in time and kill Magneto.
okay.
But inadvertently, he accidentally kills Professor X in the process.
Oh
Okay?
boy. Yeah. Wow.
So what do you get? He accidentally kills his father, not Magneto, and as a result, Apocalypse is able to rise to dominance, and mutants face this like harsh existence. Um, what I remember the most, there's some weird things that happen. Like in this one, just looking at my notes. Yeah, Apocalypse rules the future. Mutants are basically like all servants of Apocalypse or not, and they're hunted. It's kind of like the Sentinel future, but like much worse.
There's a lot of that in
Uh,
X-Men, isn't there? Like it's like all these different timelines of like a potential
and I mean, because Professor X
futures.
is like a stand-in kind of for Martin Luther King Jr. and Magneto is kind of the Malcolm X, like more the peaceful versus the militant, kind of like seeking change. If you get rid of a person like Professor X, it shows like how like that gap of progress, how noticeable it is, and how they like because of that like Apocalypse it's like the worst possible thing can happen is like an immortal mutant takes over all because Professor X dies.
Mm.
So really cool. I would highly recommend if you get the chance to just Google some images from Age of Apocalypse to see the character design, like what they look like. Like I remember Wolverine had a pretty wild design. Like they're in across the Marvel universe, like under Apocalypse's rule, it's like worse than Thanos. But it's a fun and colorful mid 90s comic book event, but one that was super popular.
Did they ever bring it to the animated show? I don't think they ever did. Right? Did they ever do that?
They did a vague reference to it. They didn't actually do an Age of Apocalypse one, but they did
Okay.
like a here's what would happen similar.
Gotcha.
Similar. Now,
Gotcha.
now that you got me wondering what episode that was that they did.
Okay.
But yeah, this was 95.
I mean, I know Apocalypse was a huge part of like the earlier X-Men series, like seasons, but I don't remember the whole thing with Legion like killing Professor X or anything like that.
So,
The only Legion I got was the horrible version in X3. Oh my god, that was such
oh,
a
you get Dark Beast in this comic book series as well, too. That's an interesting version. An evil kind of not like evil, but like nefarious beast. Um,
well. I am actually going
yeah.
to stay in the comic book world.
Oh, please do. What is your
I'm going to do a shout
favorite?
out first. This is a shout out.
Okay.
Only I honestly really wanted to make it an honorable mention, but I can't because I didn't finish the comic book. I started reading this like 15 years ago. I have it. I actually have it right here. I brought it
Oh,
in here just out of just out of like, I was like, oh, maybe I can read it before we start the show. I'm like, no, I never did. But the cover it says Super Red Man Son.
Oh, Super Red Man Son. That's such a good one too.
No, it's Superman Red Sun for the audio listeners.
Yeah.
The concept is so intriguing. I got maybe a quarter way through it. Just like I love like the fact that like Lex Luthor is like creates a Superman 2 because that's like the arms race that's happening between. Because if you don't know the story of Superman Red Sun, it's as if Clark Kent / Superman were to crash in Russia, not the U.S., and how that could have affected just the progression of who Superman is.
Yep, the Cold War, all of that.
It goes nuts at the end where it's like eventually like there's some time thing that happens where another Superman gets sent to Ukraine at the end of it. Like I was like, oh man, that's kind of wild. But like I want to read this, but the concept itself, just the idea that let's put the American hero of Superman in Russia instead of the US was so intriguing to me. And like it brings like a lot of people into this comic. It brings Batman, the Green Lanterns, like all these people show up in this comic book. Wonder Woman, all that stuff, and how that gets affected. It's really neat, the concept. But that would be a shout out. Have you read it? Have you read this?
Yes. Red Sun's great.
Yeah.
And it is like I mean, that's all they do is change literally the location of where he lands.
Yeah.
Everything else is like, the all the background, all that stuff is the same.
But all the characters
Just
get
like-
different roles, right? Because like Lex Luthor is just a scientist in Star Labs. I think Olsen is just a CIA agent, but
Yeah, he's like an agent for the government.
yeah, I don't remember what all the other roles changed. I didn't finish it, but
What did Lois Lane do? Now I can't remember.
I can't quite remember.
Anyway.
I had it up, but my honorable mention though is still in the comic book realm. It is Injustice: Gods Among Us.
Ooh,
yeah, like I love the video game. I didn't read the comic of it, but like just the I guess the event that makes all this happen. Because like comic books do this all the time. We're like parallel universes and multiverse, and we're in the world of multiverses right now in the era that we live in. Like every movie I think is a multiverse.
Yeah, I know, right? Like,
but this one, came out. The game came out 2013. I think the comic book was the game first, right? Wasn't the game around the same time as the comic?
Game first, based on comic, but game first, like based on like cherry picked some ideas from some comics.
Yeah, but like
just
its
own story.
The concept of like, because I mean I know we've had Superman going evil in other storylines before. Like he becomes like I know in the animated show had him like become Black Superman, where he like kind of does a military type state sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this Superman,
Black-suited Superman.
Yes. This one was just like how it happens, I guess, and how the Joker is the one to do it. And Superman just goes freaking bonkers because the Joker just does it because he's so unique to Superman's villains. He's nothing like the villains that Superman deals with, right? And he just doesn't know how to handle the Joker at all. But Batman does. But like Superman just breaks. And just the whole idea of like a futuristic society where Superman just becomes, in a sense, the actual god that everyone's afraid that he's going to become, and just sort of changes the Justice League and like becomes this fearful godlike character is just so interesting. I love that storyline. It makes me want to like go back and like watch the movie or something, but I only had the game.
There you go. But you can put on the FMV movie, right?
Sure. No, there's an animated version of it. Like an actual like
oh really?
movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it in the same like the same like DC universe as the other animated ones? The Injustice one?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the same style. I don't know if it's like the same universe, but it's because DC makes animated movies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They just base it
That's
off
what they're really good at.
Yeah.
They're really good at those.
But no, I love that whole like just the scene where like he like literally like rips Joker's heart out is just so intense and insane and crazy.
He just puts his hand right through his body, right? Like,
and seeing how like everyone's affected too, like all the when you like the thing I want to add to that is like learning how Diana changes and how the Flash changes in that universe. Is so, and then how Harley becomes more of a good person in that alternate universe because she works with the Batman of that universe and things of that nature. Like it's an interesting storyline. I really enjoy it.
it's funny thinking about like how those character. It's like you take like like certain character traits of some of these DC characters, and it's like, and if this goes wrong, what will get amplified? And a lot of the times for Wonder Woman, it's she becomes like either like this like heroic like life-saving figure, or she becomes this militaristic badass,
Hmm.
you know. And you saw that in Kingdom Come, and
Yeah.
it's there in Injustice too, right? She's Superman's right hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's such a fun, like to me that's such like a great role for her, even though it's like people are like, but Woman's a hero. I'm like, yeah, but she's from an island of warriors.
Yeah. I
Like
think
that's all they do is train them to become
I
warriors.
love playing as Wonder Woman in the Injustice game too. Like it was awesome. Like she would have like her army come over and help fight you. Like that was one of her special moves. Like all the Athenian what the Athenians or the
No, not
Amazonians?
the
Amazonians.
Amazonians.
I mean Amazonians? Whatever.
Amazonians.
But yeah, no, I yeah, it's like, comic books do that a lot though. It's like you just brought up all the different versions of X-Men. I mean, like the Flash does it, all everyone does it. Like it's just like a thing that comic books, I think, or like that. It's just a way to like showcase different versions of characters that you love, because obviously I think one of the reasons it's like, okay, well, what do we do now? How do we get these two characters to fight? Like, well, let's make a bad version, you know, Bizarro.
You know, and in this vein, I will give you a shout out as well. Before we go on to another honorable mention, from the DC universe as well. I'm sure you and maybe other people who are listening are familiar with the what was it? The Batman Who Laughs. It's a pretty recent entry into the Batman universe.
Sounds familiar. I'm not
You've
as so.
probably seen the image because it's a lot of the images of him have been floating around. It's basically the Joker as Batman. Like it's like
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
grin, the spikes, it and like kind of like a blind, almost looks like the mouth of Sauron a little
Mm.
bit, if I'm being honest. But the darkest there's a he's the Batman who laughs. So it's like this Joker version of Batman. So it's a Joker like mind inside a Batman type, you know, strategy body in mind. Anyways, this is pretty cool. I haven't read a lot of it, but I wanted to read the whole thing. Is this storyline called The Darkest Night? And
Okay.
that's Knight, The Darkest Night. So in this universe with the Knight, or with the Batman Who Laughs, he manages to it's like a convoluted way he manages to like get he gets the powers of Dr. Manhattan. Joker does, the Batman Who Laughs,
It's so weird.
and just basically makes a ton of realities that are all dystopian. Like he just remakes reality in Joker's image, which is, you know, obviously crazy, but kind of cool to see like what it would be, you know, like what he's
It
going
still
through.
baffles me that the Watchmen series, which we are going to be talking about. If you're watching a YouTube video, just so you know, I have a squid behind me. But it's weird that DC and the Watchmen are like in the same
Yeah.
odd
No,
universe-ish thing. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
I get it because it's under Vertigo, and Vertigo's DC's line of like more adult stuff. It's where they put like Swamp Thing and I feel like even the what's a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was
Yeah.
Vertigo Comics.
I saw that on the list of like alternate universes. I'm like, oh wait, why is that? I guess
Well,
it
I
makes
guess that does
sense.
count as an alternate universe. Yeah,
Alternate
alternate
timeline,
timeline.
whatever.
Steam is still king. But no, yeah, I don't know what we were talking about,
No, it's
but
just the fact that Doctor Manhattan
yeah,
is involved in
it is
DC.
weird that they're in the same universe. That
Yeah, it
like
doesn't feel right.
Rorschach can hang out with Batman or Night Owl or something.
Yeah,
It
but
seems wrong.
well,
But
speaking
yeah,
of
he
Watchmen, speaking of
Dr.
Watchmen,
Manhattan. Uh-huh.
let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and I'll talk about my next album.
Sounds good. Welcome back. All right, Justin. I believe you were saying something about The Watchmen.
You brought up Dr. Manhattan, so it just made sense to
Oh,
do this next. And I'm sure you can join this conversation. To be quite honest, I just want to like put like a link right in the middle of this video. Go watch our Watchmen review. Like, I mean,
yeah.
seriously,
There's
we have
two
two.
videos.
Yeah,
Yes,
two
two
videos.
videos, two episodes.
I'll see if I can put a link in the video thing here.
There we
Anyways,
go.
yeah, I specifically though want to talk about this series though, not necessarily the comic book,
Okay.
because honestly, they're connected in a way. Like,
Oh man, but
obviously, huh?
yeah, yeah, but that TV series is so good.
Well, see, the why I want to speak to it though, because honestly, like the fact that they were able to continue this alternate universe, because the original one is just like, okay, what if superheroes were during the World War II? That's like kind of what I took it, and Doctor Manhattan was created. That's really what changed the trajectory of this universe we're in, and we're what's his name? What's the president's name that they worship? I can't remember his name.
Oh, Nixon.
Nixon.
Yeah.
Like he becomes like this like reverent like kind of thing. But like carrying
Mm.
that through
Mm.
to the series where they, because honestly, like, we've talked at length on how great the show was. Like again, like I said, we loved that series so much. But like how they were bringing it to a modern day in the current like timeline that we live now, but using the information of what already happened in the comic that supposedly took place is like in the 60s, like the history that we're kind of following and being adapted and changed to affect the progression of the United States and the world we live in. Like it's just so amazingly done, like how the satire on just specific things that we already deal with now with like race and like the whole
Mhm.
like the reformations of like slavery, like they all get money or something like that, like all of that stuff like was just so well done. Like I don't know how else to say it, like besides that, like it was just like, oh man, it was just perfect. That's all I can say.
It really, really asked a lot of tough questions,
Yeah,
and like made people look at things. If you're watching, it's hard not to compare it, obviously, to our current society. And when we were both watching it, was during COVID, and a big part of that, which is
yeah,
not really, I mean, masks are an important theme through all Watchmen, from the comic to the movie to the TV show. But like we were all wearing masks, and it was like
yeah.
the cops were wearing masks in at the beginning of the series. And it was just like that was like one of the first things we mentioned. We were like, holy shit, like this
Yeah.
is now.
I think the
We're
series
dealing
even,
with
yeah,
now.
the series came out I think the fall before that all happened too, but
Yep.
still like it just watching
Yep.
it
It's
during it was
2018.
just, it was really interesting, like, but like
So
even
cool.
beyond the mask thing, it's just like taking all the information of what happened at that, like, the history of like slavery, and like just tweaking it and adjusting it, and like, but still keeping it grounded in a way that we understood and could like, obviously there's some bonkers things in the Watchmen series, but like it just like you can resonate and understand and like almost understand it from like our own personal, what is deep racism, what is that, like how it, like, how is it hidden, how all that stuff is covered so much in that show.
In a lot of it, in what's great, I mean, like you don't need to be like if you've read the book, it obviously rewards you,
Sure.
with some background, like all the stuff about Hooded Justice, about
Oh,
his background and
perfect.
who he
Yep.
really is. Really great stuff.
Mhm.
And just yeah, using Watchmen. I feel like if Alan Moore, because Alan Moore, who wrote Watchmen, he wrote V for Vendetta, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Swamp Thing, such an amazing comic book writer, has never watched any like film adaptation, movie or TV adaptation of his work.
Mhm.
Wish that he would see this and see like this is like, you know, I feel like he would be okay with what they've done with those
Sure.
characters and that idea, that story, and like showed you like what happens next.
Yeah.
I think it's really I think he would appreciate it. I don't know
and
if he has or not, but I feel like he would.
and just to kind of go back to just like some small detail, we won't spend forever on it, like honestly this is like, I was afraid to make this my favorite because I thought maybe you were already going to talk about it. I'm not sure, but
Mhm.
but yeah, just like the whole thing where they deal with like ongoing squid attacks, like little like rains of squid, like that little element, like just to kind of like keep that like connection of like what happened 20 years ago, whatever it would have
Yeah,
been, like those
and
little subtle things, like all and where the characters all went, they all seem to make sense, like sort of
mhm.
their trajectory and their change and their adaptation and like. But even the new characters brought in seem like a modern version of that world. It all just seems to oh, it's so good. I don't know. Go watch this show seriously, or go watch our video about this show. I don't care. Read the book. I don't do all
You
of it.
know,
Just
I feel like everybody needs to watch that show. Like it's so good. Like everybody needs to put their eyes on it at least once.
sure.
But dude, that show. I will just say, I will like, I do appreciate. We have been talking more about comic books now than any other time.
Sure. Yeah, I know.
And my favorite one is a comic book, but I have one more shout out here before
Okay.
I go into my favorite. And stop me if it's your favorite, because then I'll just give it to you.
I don't think you're gonna know
Um,
my favorite, so go for it.
it's The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Oh, that's good. I didn't think about Zelda.
So I like this one. There, and I mean, isn't the what's it? The one with Clocktown Majora's Mask? Isn't that all about timelines and time?
Sort of.
I, I
Yeah.
don't really care about that. This one's good because you get to do something really cool, and that is take the Master Sword out of the
Hmm.
stone and travel into the future. You get your cool new clothes, and you've got the sword, your adult Link finally, and you walk outside, and Ganon rules the world. It's
This
like
is your favorite alternate
all
universe is Ganon's rule.
well, I love that you because you get to
Yeah.
play in it. All
Sure.
right. So very similarly, another shout out of mine was Final Fantasy VI, like the world of balance and then the world of ruin. And it's not so much like because that's what happens, like
Sure.
it
That's
becomes the world of ruin. But in Zelda,
an
like
alternate.
Link, yes, gets to prevent this world where Ganon has taken charge and plays the organ at the top of castle in Hyrule.
Well, the
But
the,
yeah,
the Zelda
go for
timeline is all about like different alternate universe. Like the
it.
boy, the boy who
Going
failed,
down.
the boy who won, the boy who. It's all about like based like on that initial thing. Like Skyward Sword starts it, but then it splits into different versions. Where like supposedly Breath of the Wild now Tears of the Kingdom is sort of borderly the I think the continuation of the boy who lost. I think, but I'm never
Ooh.
100% sure on that. Like I don't quote me on it, but yeah, I think that's kind of like that's like the very far end of it. But yeah, like it's interesting the timeline of I have an encyclopedia somewhere that kind of explains it a little bit, but yeah, Zelda is a good one. I didn't think about Zelda. Like when I did my googling and researching, I didn't Zelda never came up as like an option for some reason. I didn't think about that one. But no, yeah, Ocarina of Time. It's perfect. It's great.
All right. Well, Justin, do you want me to go first with my favorite,
Well, I
or
have
would
one
you
more
like?
honorable mention. So
Oh, then please do.
yeah.
Please.
So my other honorable mention is the Future Trunks timeline from Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, nice deep pull.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love because the Cell Saga is probably like my favorite saga of all Dragon Ball. Like it's
Very
like I love
cool.
the whole like time travel with Trunks and then like dealing with the androids and then Cell time traveling because he doesn't
Mhm.
have the ingredients that he needs to become perfect Cell. But just I
Then
basically want to talk
selfish.
about the timeline that Trunks came from because they made a movie about it. It was a history of Trunks. I think I don't
Yes.
know if you've watched it. I love
Yes,
that
I.
freaking movie. I owned the DVD back in high school, and just seeing that world of like Goku dying, which is obviously sad because again nothing's happy in these alternate timelines because
Nope.
horrible things usually happen. Um, but yeah, Goku dying, and because he dies, everyone else dies, and it's only Trunks that's remaining. And
And
then
Gohan for a little while
and
without an
Gohan
arm,
was there, yeah, without an arm,
missing
yep.
his arm
But
from
I
the
see
elbow
the thing.
down.
I like that version of Gohan more than any other versions of Gohan. Like that version of him is great.
Because he actually does what we thought he was going to do,
Yeah, like
right? Is that it? Because
yeah,
he becomes like the fighter trains Trunks.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He becomes like badass. Like where in the normal timeline, it's not that Gohan's bad. It's just he becomes like a student and gets a girlfriend
Super
and like
Saiyan Man. Yeah, it was not what we were
yeah.
hoping for.
But
Let's just say.
and just even Bulma's kind of badass in that timeline too. Like her, like being like building. She's working on the time machine and all that stuff, and like that whole era. Like, but the androids are hilarious because they're different too. They're not the same androids as the other timeline because of everything that happened. Um, they are a little bit different. They just go around and just blow stuff up for fun. Where the other ones kind of do too, but they're a little bit. They kind of focus on the mission because they don't get a chance to really become androids because they either die or get married to Krillin for some reason. Um,
You're right for some reason.
but I mean, eventually it's sad in the end because the androids die because Trunks goes to our timeline or not our timeline, but Goku's timeline and gets powered up and goes and just blows them up in 2 seconds. I like that too. It's like
I
he just
love that
yeah
scene. I love that when he goes back to the future,
yeah.
right? And he does that.
Man, I that's such a great little thing. And then eventually that future gets worse. So like in Super too, like right, you have Goku Black that happens in that same future. It's like,
Oh, I didn't know about that.
did you watch Super? You never got that far in Super, right?
No, I didn't get that far.
Yeah, there's like some sort of god that takes over Goku's kills Goku and becomes Goku Black. Like it's like this whole thing. And then he like
I've heard
just
of that Goku
yeah.
Black, but I didn't know what
Yeah,
it
and
was.
then like the Goku comes to that timeline in a sense to stop Goku Black, and like yeah, that's weird. But
But it is
anyways,
that Trunks
it's the same
alternate future,
Trunks.
like
Yeah, same
okay,
Trunks, and he has to go get Goku because he doesn't have Goku.
yeah.
So yeah, that would be my other honorable mention. I guess shout out is the alternate universe where Biff takes over uh, the town in battle in Back to the Future. Since you brought that up, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yeah. So Back to the Future 2.
Yeah.
That would be alternate timeline.
But anyways,
Yes. All right, Justin. Here we are.
we're at our
Very end.
favorites. What is your favorite, Paul?
Well, you'll never guess, but it's from a comic book too.
Oh boy,
And
mine is not.
but
So just to kind of
this is my entry in the DC universe, and it's the Flashpoint paradox.
I was wondering if that was
And
going to come up.
mostly this is based on because I never read the books until long after they came out. But I watched the movie, the DC animated movie that came out in like 2013. Oh, so good. Because it really is true to the story. And the story is basically Barry Allen, the Flash, goes and visits his mother's grave and decides, I am going to run back in time and prevent her from dying. And he does. And as a result, his powers are gone. His mom's alive. The one, I forget who's his girlfriend's name, but she's married to someone else. There's no Justice League. Aquaman in the Atlantean forces have sunk most of Europe. And Wonder Woman and the Amazonians are conquering like England, and then they're like about to battle in like a world-ending Wonder Woman with the Amazons and Aquaman with even all of his like villains. Like what I loved about that was all of the villains in Aquaman's world were his allies, like were working for him. So it just kind of shows you like their moralities have changed. Superman does exist in this future, but he's been imprisoned in like a government facility, like all of his life. And so he's just like this little like skinny because he's been like depleted, like hasn't been able to see the sun, and he gets most of his power from the sun. Yeah, there's too much to like go into every single little bit here, but
why is it your favorite?
Two reasons.
Okay.
One, Batman is in this, but in this version, Bruce Wayne is shot by the robber in the alley at night.
Oh,
Bruce
I think
Wayne
I've seen this. Yeah.
So Thomas Wayne is the one who survives,
but he's like
and
crazy,
he becomes
right?
this alcoholic, killer Batman.
Yeah.
He has no qualms about killing. He uses guns, but he's the same kind of like genius level tactician Batman, but it's Thomas Wayne. He fucks Flash up pretty good when he comes to the Batcave, just like shows up in the Batcave. He's like, "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The other thing is, the Flash convinces Batman, like, I can show you, we can recreate the events that gave me my powers, that got me in touch with the Speed Force. And he's like, so let's try to recreate the accident again. All right.
Okay.
So the first time he does, it does work eventually, but the first time he does this, they try to recreate the accident, but it fails. And instead, like, it's like, there's like, I don't know, vats of chemicals, and they need like a lightning strike. And it all happens the same way, but instead of him like becoming the Flash, he just burns alive. Okay. Just, and Batman's like, oh shit. Like, oh god, like it failed. It failed.
Wait,
And
who burns alive?
the Flash,
The
or
Flash
Barry
does. Oh,
Allen,
Barry Allen.
trying to become the Flash again. He's trying to like recreate the accident that made him the Flash, but instead he's just like burning alive. He's like strapped to a chair, like, turn it off. It was a funny part in the book, and it was even funnier seeing it in the animated movie.
I haven't watched
I
the
mean, it's like
Flashpoint one.
you're like, crap, and you find out that because Zoom, the anti-Flash,
Yes, I know Zoom.
he's the antagonist in this. You find out that because he's using the Speed Force. That's why it's like blocking Barry from accessing it. But in the end, everybody fails, and the only thing that like everybody fails, everybody dies. Wonder Woman and Aquaman die fighting each other, and Aquaman unleashes his ultimate weapon, which they were trying to prevent, which was Captain Nova or Captain Atom being like split open, and that
Fuckers.
causing like a
How long is
Earth.
Flashpoint, you think? How many? Is it like a crossover thing, or is it just like one long comic?
It was a crossover, I thought. A limited series, so it did have tie-ins. How many issues was it though? 5 for the main series, but then a bunch of offshoots.
Offshoots. So
So
what is the resolution of Flashpoint without me knowing? Because it's like he goes and he tries to change the past to save his mother, right, from dying. Is that kind of what starts it?
that's what starts it. And really the Flash himself is the cause of all of this.
Sure.
Which Zoom, Professor Zoom or whatever, Anti-Flash, likes to rub in his face, like while he's beating him up. He's like, and you know what? I didn't even have to do anything. You did this.
Yeah.
But in the end, what he has to do is basically blink this timeline out of existence, which Batman is like, do that, and he gives him like a note to give to Bruce from Thomas Wayne.
Oh, okay.
And the Flash ends up having to run fast enough to stop himself from saving his mom in the past, like to stop that Flash.
He goes
so
back in time to stop him going from back in time, in a sense.
Correct. So you think that is what, solves the problem, right? That like everything is back to normal. But I love it because everything is kind of bad, and he gives him the note, and Wayne, Bruce Wayne thanks him for it. Batman, Bruce Wayne thanks him for it, and actually like tears up reading the note from Thomas Wayne. But after the credits, they show a boom tube opening up and a ton of parademons just flying out of it. So who knows?
Oh boy.
But it is such because it's the ultimate, like, what if the Flash can go back in time? What if he could go back in time? What if he could stop the thing that like altered his the course of his life? And it turns out you do need bad things to happen to you in life in order for them to be formative and to become, the person you're meant to be. So yes.
Before I do my final, I have another surprise topic for you.
Hmm?
Since I've noticed a trend, like any alternate timeline ends in badly. I guess Trunk's timeline maybe not so much, because he eventually stops the androids in his timeline.
Sure.
if we were to change the timeline, like it was like, what bad things would happen? Like, what do you think would happen that would be bad? If we were to change, like for example,
Well,
your Trump thing, what bad things could have happened if
well, I'll
Trump?
tell you, if you and I tried to alter the timeline in any way, then something like The Butterfly Effect starring Ashton Kutcher would never get made. You know, anything is possible.
That's a
Like
bad thing.
horrible things like that. It came up when I was looking. I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember this
Butterfly
crappy
effect.
movie."
Oh man! But imagine if we tried to change the timeline, the Warriors would never be made. Imagine if that happened, there, Paul.
Yeah. Or you accidentally d wrote or you, like, wrote a really or no, you go back and you tell George Lucas all about the prequels and
Sure.
the sequels, and it's like, "This is why you gotta do the sequels," and instead he kills himself, you know? Instead something
That's
like that.
horrible.
We get nothing. It's bought no, and then Activision buys the Star Wars property.
Activision. Actually,
Yep, and you get crappy Star Wars games for the rest of your life. Wouldn't that be a dark timeline?
oh my god.
They make Tony Hawk's Star Wars games. There you go.
Oh
What do you
man.
think? What would happen?
I don't even know. You just made me forget
All right,
everything I was talking about.
I just rocked your world.
You just
Sorry.
rocked my world. I guess if Ahsoka saved Anakin, like, would I guess we would never I don't know. We wouldn't have the original trilogy. What would be the Star Wars lore? I mean, they would just be, happy-go-lucky Star Wars universe, I guess.
If I don't know.
What bad things could happen
Ahsoka
if
well, let me tell you.
Anakin if it was saved?
Okay, so if Ahsoka was still there and prevents Anakin from going to the dark side,
Sure.
let's say they kill Sidious and they stop the Sith plot,
Mhm.
okay? You still have all the same problems that they had with the Jedi Order. You still have
Yes.
all the same, like, mistrust. It's too militarized. It's lost track of what it's supposed to do. Still have all those problems. So I don't know. It would be interesting. That would be worth a
I just
comic
had a
book
funny
or a
thought where it's
cartoon.
like they like get all the clones because Order 66 hasn't happened yet. They just have the
Yeah.
clones, so they don't know what to do with them because they just defeated the
Yeah.
Emperor and stuff. And then just
They
someone they have all like at a ceremony, and this like someone just says Order 66, and then just kills all the Jedi.
but I have a feeling though that I don't know, you could probably still have Anakin turning to the dark
I
side.
think he might be. He might be still
And he
distrustful.
might actually bring Ahsoka with him. If they like years go by and he I don't know. It's an interesting thought though. What would
Yeah,
happen?
because Anakin, I think, would get bored with what is the Anakin that won the war like? Because like
Oh yeah,
he
peace and Anakin.
yeah. What is he like? I mean, he's just so he loves war. Like he loves being a general. Like, would he miss it? Like, yeah, that'd
It
be
would be a
interesting.
soldier. Like with all these clones still left over, they would be like policing the world. It would be what's his name? Jason Solos, like
Mm,
Order
yeah,
from those books,
yeah. The Fate of the Jedi books.
Fate of the Jedi. Yeah.
Was it Fate of the Jedi, or I think it's
Or
Fate of the
like
Jedi.
the
Yeah, I know
one
you're
where
talking
he
about.
turns into Darth
It's
Caedus or
after
whatever.
the New Jedi Order ones. I think it's Fate of the Jedi. But yeah, interesting. Okay, just
All right.
thought that would be an
Your
interesting thing to
favorite,
ask.
Justin. What's your favorite?
My favorite, you know nothing about.
Okay, cool.
My favorite is BioShock Infinite.
Oh, I did say that the picture behind you I thought reminded me of BioShock
You
there for
did
a
say that
second.
earlier. I'm like, what? I don't know why, but okay.
Okay.
We have never
BioShock,
talked about Infinite. I brought up BioShock, but not Infinite before.
yes.
So I
I'm
actually was
familiar with
like back and forth on this. I'm like, did I want to make Watchmen my favorite? Because Watchmen really is good, to be quite honest. Like, I mean, that was like up there on my list.
Oh, are
But
you gonna change it mid?
no, but like the more I
Oh,
read about BioShock, it's just the ending of BioShock is mind blowing because you don't know it's an alternate timeline the entire game until the very end.
okay.
Like you're just playing the game, not understanding what is going on really, and why it could be an alternate timeline. And like when you get to the end, it just like blows your mind. Like I love the BioShock games. like I think like I like the overall game of Bioshock, the first Bioshock, but the ending of Bioshock Infinite is like phenomenal. But let me try to like wrap it up in a bow for you the best I can, because it is kind of convoluted without knowing, I guess, the whole story.
Okay. I'm
But
familiar with the first game story a bit.
they're not really connected, sort of like you're not playing the same character by any means playing the
Okay.
second the Bioshock Infinite. So you're playing this guy named Booker DeWitt. He's just a detective that was asked to go somewhere and like buy some dude, and like you go to this lighthouse that like in a sense has a rocket ship that brings you up to a space like almost an airship. It's almost like an alternate universe of what would happen to the United States if some kind of religious prophet took over and took control of everything. That's sort of
Okay.
like that part of it is. Pretty
Crazy.
much he pretty much makes like all the American presidents like a religious sort of a group. Like, oh, it's they're very racist and all this stuff, and but he creates the World Fair in an airship type city called Columbia,
Okay.
and that's kind of the setting, the set piece, what have you. So that in itself is pretty neat. It's sort of an alternate universe of what could happen in 1912 if you gave control to this crazy religious prophet dude named Comstock. But you get sent here to all you know and all you can remember is like a mission because you're a private detective to like get the girl and clear your debt. That's all you know, and you learn that there's a girl named Elizabeth and you're trying to save her and get her out of there. But the gist of it is that when you get there, you realize she can do tears into dimensions. She can create them and like go into other alternate, in a sense,
Hmm.
versions or alternate universes. And you're kind of like sort of sprinkled information through like side characters that that's kind of what's going on, but you're not quite getting it. But to get to the point of why this is my favorite alternate timeline is that you find out in the very end that Comstock, the religious prophet, the crazy prophet,
Okay.
is yourself.
What?
If you, in another version, another timeline, decide not to get baptized. So, like, what happens is that you were in like the Civil War or something, and you had this like horrible event that happens where you murder a bunch of Native Americans because you're of Native American descent, and then just kind of prove yourself because they all called you out for being Native American. You
Oh
decide
my
to go murder
God.
a bunch of Native Americans and to repent and to like decide to like take over your to like wash your sins. You go to get baptized. Some Booker DeWitts decide not to get baptized, where other ones do. The ones that decide to get baptized become this religious prophet dude and goes
Oh
crazy and goes nuts. And so you start learning all this stuff and starting to learn this information. And it's all found out when you kill Comstock at the end of the game. You find that Elizabeth has the ability because there's like all this stuff happens. Eventually, she's able to go to any type of timeline that she wants. She also just like can go nuts with it. And like you actually end up in Rapture, which is like the first game that you played. It's kind of a cool moment. It's like, oh, I'm in Rapture again, neat, because that's another timeline, that's another dimension. But you find out the reason that she has this power is because you find out that she is your daughter, this girl that you've been trying to save the whole time, and she was stolen by yourself from another dimension because he needed her power because that version of yourself couldn't have children, so he went to a different thing to get a girl, his own daughter from another dimension. All this crazy stuff, pretty much to give the power to do this whole just to kind of like be able to control the dimensions and have all this power. But it just I hope this is making sense.
It is. It's just crazy that it's funny. It's
So
funny, but
it
it's yeah,
it
it's
is
crazy.
mind-boggling amazing. Like it's like presented really well too. Like I've always like I wish you would like get to experience the Bioshock game. I know it's not your type of game, but like just the story and stuff. I would. It's been a while since I played it, but like in the
I
end,
feel like I
like
just missed my chance with those.
yeah. Well, I mean they're on PlayStation still, but the end, very end, is like, okay, so the only way we could stop Comstock from becoming this, because every dimension, it's either you don't become Comstock, but there's always a Comstock out there that's trying to steal that girl. They're
Yeah.
always there. There's always going to try to steal your daughter in a sense, who is his own daughter, but you know what I mean. So the only way, because he's like, well, we could just go kill Comstock when he's a baby. We'll just go kill him right away. It's like it doesn't matter because you kill Comstock, it doesn't stop it from happening. You just stop it before he becomes Comstock, which is right before the baptism. So in a sense, the end of the game is like multiple versions of this girl Elizabeth or Anna, however you want to call it. Is in a sense they're all appearing out of nowhere, and then they just like drown you because you let them drown you and kill yourself in a sense to prevent. And as that's happening, all the Elizabeths disappear and all that stuff. So it is wild. Let me tell you, like this is why I
It
like.
really does like kick in all that stuff. I didn't know that the BioShock games had like such a
Oh yeah,
timeline.
oh
Like a,
yeah. Like it is,
oh,
but like the timeline part is just like because like that one moment of like religious decision, like baptism or no baptism, changed the course of the history of whatever happened. And
hear that, kids?
yeah,
Get
so
baptized.
but yeah, so it is a bonkers ending. I mean, really, that's the main thing behind it. Is like it really, oh man, just rereading it again was like, man, that freaking thing was awesome. Like it was really cool. And then like throughout the game, there's like these scientists that kind of talk about it. Like it's like almost like they're jotting down all the different variations of Booker DeWitt. Because there's another variation where he comes to Columbia and Elizabeth's already gone. Like you actually go to this variation when you're playing the game because she does these random tears. But then that version of Booker DeWitt that comes to Columbia where Elizabeth is already gone, he becomes like a real rebellion leader. Like he like kind of rises up against Comstock, and you're in that. But then he find out he died, and then you're in the version where he's like kind of revered and like everyone loves him, and that's like a whole thing where they start like thinking that you're like a false version of him and start attacking you. So it's like, but yeah, the game is wild. Like I would just look up just the ending video to be quite honest because it's really cool. I mean, granted it's an older game,
Okay.
but yeah, it is good. That is my favorite alternate timeline.
Phew. Man, okay.
Yeah, like
It's not terribly confusing.
it's not, but
just
because I explain, I got into
funny.
really fast. But like when you're playing the game and that happens, because you've been playing the game what 15, 20 hours, thinking that you're just some private detective just trying to save some girl to clear your debt because. And that's the other thing too. He gave up his daughter to this person, but then he regrets it the second he does it to clear some debt that he had. So it's like there's all this stuff. But yeah, it is. I remember like after I beat the game, because like the end of the game is like sort of like a walking simulator almost. Like you're just sort of like just absorbing all this information. I just sat there for like 10 minutes. I'm just like, what the hell just happened? Like, just like, yeah. But anyways, that is my favorite alternate timeline. Well,
Very
anyways,
nice.
yeah. This
Wow,
has been
this
fun.
has really spanned the realm of comics and video games. I'm surprised, like we really didn't talk too much about anything but comic books and then video game.
And some anime. Sprinkle that in there a little bit.
Oh man, some anime, which is based on comics.
There's not really any good versions of it in movie format, to be quite honest. I couldn't really think of like a good one, really. I mean, there's not.
Back to the Future 2 is the only one. That one has a good
Yeah, I
good
mean,
thing. Like in the end, he gets everything. He gets the cool
yeah,
truck. And
yeah.
Biff is
I
cleaning
mean,
it, or Biff Jr., whatever.
there's tons of multiverse stuff right now, but it doesn't like it's not
Yeah,
that it's not the same as some of the ones that we talked about. They have like I guess more weight behind them in a sense. But
that's true.
anyways,
This has been very fun, though, to
yes,
kind of
let us
explore
know
these alternate
if
realities.
there's an alternate timeline that we didn't talk about. Please let us know in the comments of what your favorite was, or if you like anything that want to add anything that we had to say. But beyond that, thank you for listening.
Hopefully, we'll see you next time. So, for Playing Favorites, I'm Paul.
I'm Justin.